Mattie McGrath, 3 minutes.
Last Caller, and at the outset, I want to say I don't condone violence from any source whatsoever. Taoiseach, the findings of the Central Bank's residential mortgage arrears and repossession statistics for Q2 in 2018 shows that accounts in arrears over 700 days now constitute 42% of all accounts in arrears, and at €2.5 billion represent 91% of arrears balances outstanding. Non-bank entities now hold 61,446 mortgages accounts for principal dwelling house and buy-to-lets combined. Of this number, 47,820 relate to principal dwelling houses mortgage accounts. These numbers provide us with some important context of the sad events that unfolded in Roscommon last week. Videos of the event show that two elderly brothers and a sister being violently dragged against their will from the only home they ever had for 64 years by private security agents all the way from Craigavon in County Armagh. While much has been made of the physical violence surrounding the event, remarkably little has been heard about the financial and emotional violence that has been heaped on the tens of thousands of families right across this state by both the banks and the so-called vulture funds. They have terrorised the old and the infirm, not with baseball hats, but with bailiffs and indeed the sheriffs. The Register and the County Sheriff's system have too often been allowed to act with impunity as it inflicts misery on ordinary people and the families in mortgage distress. The private investment funds have launched their attacks to the letterbox with menacing letters and indeed demanding letters and late-night phone calls. They have driven fathers to suicide and have left children devastated by the loss. Many occasions, and I know of many, and I'm sure you do too, Taoiseach. They have imprisoned mothers who have tried to stand up to them in the courts with no legal representation. Is this not a violent assault that is equal in gravity and distress to the events of last week? Taoiseach, I believe it is. Only last week I had the right to start mortgages after representations were made to me on behalf of an elderly couple in County Laois. Start mortgages are pursuing this couple, despite being notified by medical search and otherwise that the husband is suffering from a terminal illness and is wheelchair-bound, and despite the fact they have been attempting to engage constructively to repay their debts, but no engagement meaningful from the banks. Start mortgages. Taoiseach, every day of the year, families are being hounded and terrorised by debt collection practices in this state, through practices that can only be described as vicious, cruel and inhumane. They are being supported by a hands-off approach that gives them de facto blessing and the guise of legality. Gardaí standing idly by, and I'm blaming the Gardaí. The fact of the matter is this: the courts are handing out court orders with no indication of how these orders should be enforced. They must change, otherwise we are simply given a blank cheque to these firms to act in any way that they see fit, with the blessings of the court backing upon them. And coming in here acting as the third force from Northern Ireland. And Taoiseach, I'm calling you to take action here and to do what John McGuinness's committee recommended, to give the powers to compatibility, to bring these people before the Oireachtas committee at least.
Mr. Deputy, I just want to acknowledge the fact that you've raised a sensitive issue in a very appropriate and reasonable manner, and I recognise that you've put on the records of this House that you condemn violence from any source, no matter what source it may come, as do I. I think it's important that we acknowledge that mortgage arrears are going down. In Ireland, 5-6 years ago, there were hundreds of thousands of people who were out of work, who were unable to pay their mortgages, and their mortgages were in arrears. Because the economy has recovered, because more people are back at work, because incomes are rising again, mortgage arrears are going down and down and down. But there are a core of people who may never be able to pay back what they owe. And those are people who need our help. And we've put in place systems to help them, particularly the Awalia scheme, through which people can get legal advice and financial advice to help them to restructure their debts. 116,000 mortgages in Ireland have been restructured, and 87% of those loans are performing, they're being paid back. So there is help there. 116,000 families in Ireland who have had their mortgages restructured are proof of that. Even taking, for example, the mortgage to rent scheme, where you can give up your home but still stay in it. You can't pay your mortgage, you surrender the property to the lender, but you stay in it and you pay rent. There are now 424 families who've retained their homes by being willing to give it up but to rent it thereafter. And those 116,000 people who've had their mortgages restructured, those 400 families who have signed up for mortgage to rent, are much greater numbers than the number of eviction orders that we see being executed. And the number of eviction orders being executed is actually going down. It was 400 last year, 400 the year before, 900 the year before that. And courts hear both sides of the story and rarely issue a repossession order or an execution order unless there's good cause and other avenues have been exhausted. So certainly I'd say to people that if they're in a position where they genuinely can't pay back their debts, to seek the assistance that is available. And so many people have done that and have been able to either settle their debts and stay in their home, settle it to their satisfaction, or have their loans restructured.
Because while there are meaningful efforts being made in many cases, there are many cases, and we all know of them, of business people, firms and family homeowners who are trying their best to deal with the banks, and the banks will not entertain them, and they drag out the process forever. We must send a clear message, Taoiseach, to the people who carry out these violent and, evictions with cruelty and indeed with great, literally with freedom to do it and impunity to do it. There are third force that shouldn't be in this state. We're a sovereign state. We haven't got a Síochána and the army who serve us well. So no one condones violence from any source, as I said, and I certainly don't. Yet the fact remains that people are being driven to the brink, Taoiseach, day in, day out, the menacing and the lack of engagement. And a different person in the bank every time you go. As I said, what happened in Roscommon, people are responding to enormous desperation and the perception that all the powers of the state and the courts is doing nothing to shield them from the brutality and regime of evictions. And Taoiseach, you said courts don't give out orders lightly. I hope so. But for a lay person to go in and try and represent themselves, they just can't do it. They're intimidated and they're bullied and they're treated very badly. And above all, we don't want a third force from Northern Ireland or any place else in here. And I raised this with you in 2015. It happened in Carlow. I raised it umpteen times with you, Taoiseach, and it's going on. Will you change the legislation to ensure that these are sent back to where they belong, back to Grey Evans and back to the former parliamentary past if they want to, and let the people of Ireland do themselves honestly and repay as best they can. It's a very emotive issue of victims, as you know, and I want you to take action, please.
McGrath, you can't continue to ignore the chair.
I'm way under what other people took last council, to be fair. I accept that. A minute and a half over and a second.
Not you.
But I am way under, please, to be fair.
No, you're
way under.
been more than fair.
I can see the clock. But Taoiseach, you have to act, please.
Deputy McGrath.
Look at the clock.
You must have respect for the chair.
What about other parties? They can be 2 minutes over it.
I'll deal with other parties.
I'll
deal with others.
Well, you don't.
Are you making an allegation? I asked you to withdraw that. I asked you to withdraw that I'm giving. Hold on. I asked you to withdraw this. Sit down, Deputy. Take your seat. I asked you to withdraw the remark of favouritism. I asked you to withdraw it.
I didn't say favouritism. No, I didn't say favouritism.
I'm synopsising what you're saying. I'm doing a synopsis of what you're saying, and if you feel that I'm doing that, then I suggest you deal with it in the appropriate way. No, I'll deal with it in my way, and you deal with it in your way. Taoiseach, when you're ready.
I agree, in light of the events that we've seen in recent weeks, that we need to extend regulation to these private security firms. It's already the case that if you're a doorman, if you're somebody fitting an alarm, you need to be registered and you are regulated. And I agree that we need to extend regulation to these private security firms to make sure that they act in accordance with the law. But for people who genuinely can't pay their debts, genuinely can't pay back the money they owe, there are options. The Awalia service is there, offering free legal advice, free financial advice, court mentors who will go into the courts with people and assist them. And the proof of that is the 116,000 individuals and their families in this state who have had their mortgage restructured, and almost 90% of those are able to pay their bills. And that's the right way to go, and that's what I'd encourage people to do.